Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And as you can no doubt see, we're back on Zoom because I have got another guest that I am super excited to introduce you all to. Her name is Lauren Grierson and she runs the YouTube channel Lauren Learns History. And actually, she very kindly asked me to collaborate with her on a video that will be coming out very soon, which I'm going to get her to tell you all about. So let's go and meet her. Hello, Lauren.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
Oh, well, I'm so pleased to have you on. And of course, we met in person not very long ago, and we met because we were collaborating for your channel. And I want to get to that in a minute, but I think a great way to lead into it is if you can tell everybody a little bit about your YouTube channel and the content you make and what you're doing with it.
It's called Lauren Learns History. I'm not a historian. I'm no academic. I just love history. I love history. I love telling stories and I love working with families and children in museums. So my husband and I, who also works in museums, decided to create this YouTube channel and call it Lauren Learns History. Basically, we seek out our favourite museums for families and for children, and we contact them, ask them if we can collaborate together to create a mini history documentary for children based at their museum. So we would pick one subject and create a 10 to 12-minute video based at the museum and work with historical experts and costumed interpreters, actors, to bring that story to life in situ at the museum, hopefully inspiring families and children to then go to that museum and learn more themselves.
That's amazing. And that is indeed how we met. And I think what's great is that the people who can't get to those museums, because of course that's what you want people to be doing. You want them to be getting out and going to that particular museum. But of course, YouTube's great because it's global. And so you're able to show people who might not be in this country, or maybe they're planning a trip here. Perhaps they might put that museum on their list of places to come to. So, and particularly post what is going on in the world now, it's really great that museums, and particularly sometimes smaller museums, are getting supported in that way. I'm going to let you tell people what we were working on because it's your video, and also let them know when it's being released so they can come follow and have a look at it.
Yes, sure. I am so excited that you were able to work with us on this because Dr. Cat was absolutely brilliant. It was so great. I work at a museum often called Strawberry Hill House, and I work really closely with the education manager there to do school visits, and they absolutely adore it. We travel back in time and we go for an adventure around the house, and then the children all dress up at the end. So I spoke to Sally, the education manager, and I said, look, I'm starting this channel, Lauren Learns History, and I explained, as I just did to you there, this is what I'm going to do. I want to work with as many museums as possible. I know many museums, especially the smaller ones, can't always afford to do this, so I want to collaborate together and basically what I just explained to you. And can we do something at your museum? And she said, yes, please. So we sat down together and I said, what about if we do how to run a household the Georgian way? Strawberry Hill House, if you're not aware of Strawberry Hill House, is a very unusual Georgian house, isn't it?
Yeah, that's unusually the word I would use. I often talk about, I think on this channel, Brighton Pavilion, and how it makes no sense because it's the Taj Mahal on the outside and it's Chinese on the inside. Strawberry Hill House is like that, but in London, except for it's a weird kind of Georgian medieval Disneyland before Disneyland. That's how I describe it. What do you think?
Absolutely. I don't think I could have put it better myself. It's enchanting, it's weird, it's wonderful, and they recently did a photo shoot for Frozen there, and you can absolutely see why. It's amazing, and it was an amazing chance to get the camera out and to work with you as well, to work with you there. So Kat was Margaret, who was Horace Walpole's housekeeper. So I should probably explain in case anyone's completely unaware of Strawberry Hill. Horace Walpole was the son of the first Prime Minister, and he was kind of the first inventor, so to speak, of the Gothic genre. And he loved Gothic novels, he loved reading, he loved writing, and he created this. By the way, I apologise if I'm massively oversimplifying this. That's what I do. I oversimplify a lot for children in video. So as I said, I'm no historian, but it's this impressive Gothic castle, and he wanted people to feel as though they were walking inside a storybook, one of these Gothic novels themselves. And he wrote a book called The Castle of Otranto, based around this house, this castle that he built, Strawberry Hill House. Anyway, that's a bit of history to give you the context. He had a housekeeper called Margaret, and she was the one who ran the house, and he allowed her to run tours for the local residents in Twickenham. And they would come to the front door in groups of 4. And they would pay for a tour of the house, and they would each pay Margaret a guinea each. I won't give too much away, actually, because I'm probably giving far too much away for the video now, getting carried away because I get so excited talking about it. But Kat was playing Margaret, and the story in the video goes that I wanted to find out how the Georgians ran a household, and Kat, as Margaret, took me round Strawberry Hill House and showed me the very weird and wonderful ways that the servants used to clean the floors and clean the paintings. It was brilliant fun.
It absolutely was, and it was a real joy to be back in costume in a historic site, interpreting and telling a story. And I want to go back to something you apologised for in that answer, which was for potentially oversimplifying things. I don't think that you do that. I think you present history in a very plain speaking way that can hit at all levels, because I think when people apologise for oversimplifying, it comes across as they perhaps think they're being patronising, and that is what you never are. And that's actually another question, because your channel, it is aimed at children, it's family content. What age range are you aiming your videos at? Do you have a specific one in mind, or is it all ages but particularly geared to children? What's the coup?
I think in terms of tone and the way that I'm writing, I have the age group of 4 to 12 in mind. But I'm trying, as it's still a new channel as well, to not limit it completely. I know that children have siblings and might want to watch it with their families. And also I've kind of got into my head some ideas in the pipeline that I've been thinking, oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, Ian, we should do a video on Jane Austen, or I really want to do a video on Jane Austen. And spend a week living as Jane Austen. Yeah, it'd be amazing, right? Amazing. Yes. Amazing. So some of the ideas I have might be better suited to teenagers, say, something like Jane Austen. So I don't want to limit it completely. The one that I did at the RAF Museum, when we finished it, and it was one of the first videos we did, and I watched it back, I thought, I'm not sure if this maybe would specifically fit into the 4 to 12 age group. It might be a little bit older, but that's fine. Then again, we did that fun training montage at the end which was so much fun, with the wonderful Josh from Zoom Through History, who very kindly agreed to be our Spitfire pilot. So when I was filming that, I had in mind the younger children, and I really wanted to show off the fantastic playground that the RAF Museum have. I'm yet to take my little boy there, and he's 2, so he's even younger than that age group we've been going for, and I know that he's going to be, whoa, sensory overload, this is amazing, look at these fantastic planes and the playground, which, by the way, is, if you don't know it, it's all done up like mini Spitfire pilots and the mini offices, and it's just so immersive and enchanting. So yes, sorry, the long-winded answer to that question is, I think when we started this, 4 to 12 was the kind of tone I had in mind of the writing. But it's open to anyone. It's open to anyone who loves history, even adults.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned stuff watching your Spitfire video. It's not my period of history. It's incredibly accessible. I didn't feel like I was watching something that was aimed at very, very young children. I didn't feel like it was something that I wasn't supposed to be watching. I think the content on your channel is phenomenal, and you need more subscribers because you deserve it. The work you put in and the quality of your videos is just utterly spectacular. And I also think my audience is probably somewhat older than the audience that you're going for, but I know that a lot of people who watch my channel, hello everybody, I know that lots of you have children and grandchildren, some of whom are they've all been bitten by the history bug, and some of whom you are desperately trying to hook. So what tips and tricks could you give to my audience about how to get the history bug firmly into their young people? Like, how can we corrupt them into the world of history geekdom and make them one of us?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, I mean, history is so varied. There are so many different subjects, so many different time periods. So what might interest one person, with Spitfires, somebody might get really excited about the idea of watching a video of Spitfire. Somebody else who might be subscribed to the channel that week might go, well, I would prefer a video on Georgian servants. So I guess find out what they're interested in. Yeah, is it the Egyptians? Is it the Romans? Is it the servants? Personally, and Ian always laughs at me, I've always had this weird fascination with servants in history. Absolutely fascinated. That's my thing. And what about you?
When I was asked that question in an interview, my response was basically throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So if you've got a child who is engaged or interested by sport, maybe they are avid when it comes to football, well, let's take them and see if they like jousting. Let's see where they go with that. If you've got a child who is really into the theatrics of it all, take them to the Globe. Show them Shakespeare. Find their way into history that might not be traditionally historical, and hook them that way, and then just drill down and keep them in the fold.
Keep going. That's great. Yes, I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, but you are absolutely right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, history is so varied, and there's so many different ways of telling it as well, and where one person might find just walking around a museum and soaking it all up, their way of enjoying history. Someone else might prefer to watch a historical drama, say, and sit down with a cup of tea and watch something. I've just watched Leonardo and I loved it on Netflix.
Yeah, that's a really great point. A lot of people ask me what I think about historical fiction, and sometimes it does deviate from the known historical facts, or it extrapolates and interprets on top of them in ways that maybe I wouldn't choose to do. But what is absolutely clear to me is that when things are set in period locations, whether that's somebody adapting a Jane Austen novel or a Shakespeare play, or they're doing something like Bridgerton, or they're doing Leonardo, whatever's happening there, it's going to drive people to search out the history. All we have to look at is the favourite. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, I read up on Queen Anne. She's really interesting. And she was completely lost to so many of us until that film came out. So it's vitally important, I think. And you're a storyteller by trade, so you're perfectly placed for this. Because history is stories, isn't it?
It's stories, absolutely. And it's escapism, isn't it? It's losing yourself in a story. Yeah.
Could you possibly, we've already talked about the video that I'm in, but have you got any teasers for other videos that you're planning on making, that you've already recorded? What's coming down the pipeline?
Oh, so we did a lovely one at the London Museum of Water and Steam, and it was called The Stinky History of London Sewers. And yes, so one of not the grisly is not the right word, more kind of well, stinky, really. Very stinky video. Stinky history. I met with the lovely director there, Liz, and she told me, because I love to meet with, as I said, I'm not the expert. The premise of the videos is that I go to learn history myself. So I do the research before I go, and then I learn even more history when I meet the expert or the historical interpreter playing someone as you did. I met with Liz and she talked to me all about cholera and the setting up of the sewage system in the Victorian times that we have today, and the Great Stink. And to do that in the museum and walk around and see all the big water pumping engines that are based at the museum at the same time was lovely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important history. It's that kind of when we start to become aware of waterborne contagion and how many lives are saved by the sewage system is just, there are so many advances that happen, but I think we rarely think about how important the Victorian sewage network was for keeping so many people alive. I think it's I understand why it's lost. It's not particularly glamorous, but it is vital, isn't it?
It is, and Liz showed me this amazing experiment where at the end of the video I get really geekily, it's not a word, is it? Very,
no.
It is now, yeah, thanks Kat. Geekily, I'm owning it, excited over a filtration demonstration that Liz gave me, showing how, and I'm afraid I can't remember his name now, but the man who created this filtration system for the sewage network, you can do this experiment at home. It's small stones, rocks and sand, and you have a cone and a coffee filter piece of paper, and that goes inside, and then you put the 3 layers of the stones, the rocks and the sand into the cone, and then you get a really dirty, muddy cup of water and pour it in, and it goes in all gross and disgusting, and it comes out completely clear, like completely clear.
That's amazing. And
it's amazing.
I'm also thinking that in the UK, at least, I know we've got half term coming up, that if you're looking for something home-based to potentially do with your children, to keep them occupied, what a great experiment. So yeah, I think give that a try, and perhaps if you give it a go, see how it turns out, leave it in the comment section.
Yeah.
Lauren, will you hang around as well and check out the comments? And
yes, absolutely. Oh, I will. I'd love to. Thank you. Because actually, as my videos are for kids, I don't have comments on mine. It's turned off because the video is made for kids. So I'll do so on yours if they.
Lovely. But you can comment on your Instagram as well. So if people.
That's right. Actually, no, you're right. Yes, I can. Instagram or Twitter. So if you want to get in touch and tell me if you do the experiment. Wonderful.
Oh, amazing. I will, of course, I've got more questions for you, but I will just flag up right now that I'm going to leave links to all of your social medias in my description box so that people can go find you, follow. Make sure you are also subscribed to Lauren Learns History on YouTube so that you can see my YouTube interpretation debut, and I hope you enjoy that. So that will be good fun. And I want to know what you think of me being Margaret, the housekeeper. She's very severe, but we had a lovely time. And also, I will, where possible, figure out all of the places that you have listed today, because you've done amazing ads for so many cool museums, and I will also leave those linked in my description box, and then everybody can go and check those out as everything is opening back up and these museums are opening for people. Huzzah, huzzah, get thee to thy local museum. So now we're going to get onto the more personal questions. What, Lauren, first sparked your passion for history?
Oh, well, my nan, I know this one straight away because my nan used to take me, she used to look after me each a day a week when I was right little, and she used to take me to a place called the Priesthouse Museum in Wimborne, where I grew up near Wimborne in Dorset, and it was a tiny little museum. I thought, I wonder if you're going to ask me this question. I'm going to look up the Priesthouse Museum and just remind myself of it. And I forgot to, actually. So I'm trying to remember it. And in my mind, it's a little terrace house, but it completely might not be, actually. So sorry if it's not, but that's how it is in my memory. But it was a Victorian museum, and as I said, it was very small, and I absolutely loved it. And I can't remember all that much about it, but what I can remember is how it made me feel. Every week we used to go there, and I used to go to my nan's, and she'd say, "Where do you want to go today, Lauren?" I said, "I want to go to the Priesthouse Museum." Again, so we'd go every time. And I remember it was very, I keep saying it was very small, it was, and I remember going up these little staircases, and I remember the rooms, and some of the rooms would just be interpretation, your very classic boards of interpretation, and there'd be a case of old children's toys, and I used to stand there and I used to stare at the old children's toys. But what I really loved about it was that there was a couple of rooms, not many, but just a couple of rooms that were done out, I think, downstairs, like the servants' room. I'm thinking which rooms were done out, and I'm sure I remember the servants' room downstairs. And I'm sorry if I doubt anybody, well, if there might be, mine is such a small museum and it's been so long. So if anyone has been to the Priesthouse Museum and I'm getting any of this wrong, or it's changed in goodness knows how many years, I apologise. But I think there were models there. You know how sometimes you go to museums and there are models and they're done out like an old Victorian or something. Anyway, I absolutely loved it because of all of that. It was like stepping into a storybook, and I'd walk around and I'd pretend I was the scullery maid or something, because I always think if I was a Victorian, I'd have been the scullery maid. I just know it.
Yeah. I feel like you're describing a little bit my childhood.
Really?
Because it was my granddad that
Was
got
it?
my love of history. And there were certain things that he taught me and resources that he used that were definitely not 3-year-old appropriate. Like, I don't recommend you teach your preschooler about World War II by pulling out one of the books and showing them pictures of people coming out of Belsen. Don't do that.
No.
Oh, yes. It can scar a child for life. Also, teaching a child the Tudors, don't go in hard with Anne Boleyn's execution, because that just makes the kid weird. My imaginary play was helping Anne Boleyn prepare for her execution, because even in my childhood games of weirdness, I was the bit part player. So yes, I fear that mine is perhaps darker than yours.
Maybe, but I love it. I love it.
But very, very similar, and it's that kind of, it's the role that so often is played by an interested adult in a young child's life. I mean, maybe you get a great history teacher at school, but hook them fast, hook them young, and keep them in the fold. That's my motto.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I want to go back to the Priesthouse Museum now. If anyone's watching from the Priesthouse Museum or knows anyone from this tiny little museum in Wimborne, can I come back?
Well, yes, there needs to be a video from now. There definitely needs to be a video from the Priesthouse
It
Museum. That
does.
has to happen.
It has to be. It has to happen.
So, the last question I want to ask you, it's a big one. It's a tough one,
Okay.
and that is, why does history matter?
Oh, wow. That is a big question. Yeah. Um, well, there are two routes you can go down with this, and I would actually advocate both answers, but I'm going to give. Firstly, it's total escapism. For me personally, I'm talking from my personal experience. Um, it's like having the opportunity to read a book and get lost in a book, or watch a film, or go to the cinema, or go to the theatre. For me, it's the same experience as I was saying about going to the Priesthouse Museum all those years ago, and now ever since every museum that I go to, it's that total escapism of walking around and breathing in that history, breathing in the stories, isn't it? And feeling as though you're walking inside a storybook, you're participating in that. As so many museums, my favourite museums are the ones where houses are done up as though they would have been, or yeah, you get to experience that. So I would say that definitely it matters, because we all need escapism. We all need that. And then I would say, why does it matter? I mean, we learn from so much from history, don't we? We can learn so much from history. And what I find really fascinating, and what really interests me about history personally, is the people in history, and researching the events and finding out about the people's experiences. When we went to the RAF museum with Josh, the questions I wanted to ask him, what I was so keen to know is, what was your experience as an RAF pilot in the war? Did you miss your family? What did you have for breakfast? Those tiny little things. And really, the more we learn, the more we research, the more we watch these historical dramas, the more I think that, I mean, we don't change, do we? People are people. And that's what's so fascinating. No matter what time period you're in, we all have the same thoughts, we all have the same feelings. We're all human, aren't we? What do you think? What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a brilliant answer, and we are in kind of constant conversation, I think, with the past, even when we don't necessarily recognize it or know it. And it's within our own families, the fact of life of our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents has affected the way that we have been raised. And there's that old saying that the past is a different country, they do things differently there. And when I see what that means, I think what that obscures is the fact that when it comes to the history of the evolved human, what we know as recorded history, there's been no evolution. Like we perhaps don't have as many wisdom teeth people in the world, but that's pretty much it in terms of how our brains function. I understand how that's happening, but they haven't changed. And I do think that a recognition of this and of our heritage and of our histories, it fills in, it colours us in a little bit. It kind of it lets us know who we are more fully. And you talking about the experience of history and it feeling real, and about how real people felt, do you know what? It sparked a memory of my grandmother telling me a story. My grandmother was a Londoner born and bred, and her parents had a fish and chip shop, which is probably one of the most London jobs that you can have. And she was a very young teenager when war broke out, and she was evacuated down to Brighton. And my grandmother, perhaps it's where I get it from, was hard-headed and decided she didn't want to be evacuated. So she got the train back up by herself.
Oh, no.
And came back to the fish and chip shop, and her dad said, well, if you're here, you're going to work. And so when the air raid sirens would go off, he'd pack up a pallet of fish and chips to take down to the tube stations where people were sheltering, and he'd cover it with a coat. But of course, the air raid sirens had been going off while he's doing this. So then my grandmother would go running down to the tube station, and on occasion, she said, a bomb would fall so close that the blast from the shrapnel and the wind would blow the coat off of the fish and chips. That's how close the bombs were falling to her. And I just think, at that point, she's like 14.
Oh, my word.
What does that do to, I mean, I think about myself at 14, and how did she, I think I was still playing with Tamagotchis, which hated me considerably. But how did that happen? And I think that's so close. When you start going back, and you, for example, you hear about Henry VII's mother, Margaret Beaufort, who is in her early teens and pregnant, and then her husband dies of plague before the baby's born, and she's living in the middle of the Wars of the Roses, and you just think, wow, I can try and understand.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. But these are lives that are so amazing and terrifying. And so that's what I think I love the most about history, is that you're sometimes forced, if you want to be a historian or a lover of history or a student of history, when you look at these people and their lives, you have to do a lot of work to put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And doing that, I think, is great practice for being a good citizen and a good fellow human.
You're absolutely right. As you were talking just then, I suddenly thought, that's it. It gives us empathy, doesn't it? History gives us empathy, and that's so important. It gives us that chance to stop and to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, so that when we are faced with a situation in our lives in real time, we have that empathy for other people. Yeah.
I think also it reminds us that nobody thinks they're the villain of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Even if history remembers them that way. Richard III never thought he was the villain of the piece.
No.
And maybe that included, if Ricardians don't come for me, if he is responsible for the death of the prince in the tower, that would include that too. Yeah. He wouldn't have done it because he was trying to be villainous. There would have been purpose.
Yes.
And a purpose of the greater good.
Yeah.
As he saw it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the case for all figures in history.
Yeah.
They don't think they're the bad guy.
Oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? No, yes. It's so interesting to see a film. I'm sure there have been films, I can't think of the top of my head, where it comes at it from that different angle.
Really interesting.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I think we've hopefully that's given everybody watching as well food for thought, and we would love you to join in this conversation in the comments. And also over on both of our social medias. As always, I like getting suggestions for future videos, and perhaps, Lauren, you would also like suggestions people like you to go to?
Yes, please. Yes. Oh, and you've just reminded me as well, actually, earlier you asked me, do we have any in the pipeline that I'm excited about? We have got one. I've been talking to someone from the education department at the Golden Hind, and the other day I came up with, well, Ian suggested something to do, and I'm not going to say, and I thought, yes, I can't wait to do that one. I'm so excited. We've got a very fun, quirky idea to do with pirates and
so excited
stuff at the Golden Hind. So yes.
Of course, as they would call themselves, privateers.
Exactly. Yes, I apologise. Yes, Ian said to me, he was like, yes, Lauren, they'd call themselves privateers. Francis Drake wouldn't be happy at you calling him a pirate.
I mean,
you're very right.
If it quacks like a duck. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege talking to you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
is there anything, before I let you go,
Yeah.
is there anything you would like to plug or say?
Yeah, actually, there is one more thing, one more idea that I have had that I'm going to do this week on my channel, and that is I'm planning to create a playlist called Lauren Recommends. So as well as our own content, well, that's mine and Ian's content going into museums, I'm also going to be seeking out content from for families, for children, from other people to do with history, and I'm gonna put several up to start with, so there's a few up, and then each week I'm gonna find another one to add to the list. So if you go on to the channel, there won't just be my content, there'll be a Lauren Recommends, that I've got some in mind already, and hopefully that will help too.
Yeah, that playlist is an amazing idea. I think that's people are going to get a lot out of that. Thank you for doing that. I'll certainly be checking that out. That's brilliant. Amazing work. Thank you so much. So, what do you think about everything we've been talking about today? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comment section underneath this video. And as Lauren said, she's going to be checking in there too, responding where appropriate. You can also follow her and I over to social media. I'll leave links to our Instagrams and Twitters in the description box. If you follow us there, we can also continue this conversation. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then why not share it with some friends? Why not also let me know you liked it by hitting the thumbs up? Please also subscribe to the channel. And perhaps if you are subscribed, just check that you are still subscribed, in case YouTube has unsubscribed you against your will. While you're there, checking, subscribing, or resubscribing, why not hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button so that YouTube will tell you when I've next uploaded. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.